Splitgate has had a long and interesting journey. It launched back in 2019 on PC and 2021 on consoles, and that's where I started playing. I loved the movement, floating around the environments. It was very similar to Halo with a few fun additions like the portals. I played it with my friends for a pretty good amount of time, and we loved it. However, it was pretty short-lived, and we eventually left it. And apparently, not long after we did, so did the devs. And now Splitgate 2 is here. Twice, evidently. And some change. The first time I didn't tune in, between the devs name-dropping Titanfall.
And I wish we could have Titanfall 3.
To them also dropping a fucking battle royale alongside their arena shooter.
No.
Frankly, it seems like you are targeting two different groups with two very different approaches. But I tried it on the second run and a few things just straight up don't click. And after rewriting this script a handful of times over a handful of months, for me, it comes down to a few things. They changed the movement from Splitgate 1, and not for the better. The weapons and armor are over-designed, and the weapons themselves are redundant. Fundamentally, Splitgate 2 lacks a strong visual identity. It feels both padded and empty at the same time. And the first pitch was, well, mixed. Please play our arena battle royale shooter. Just an odd pitch right from the start. It didn't do so great, and it had to relaunch. Then, not too long after the launch, they relaunched the Battle Royale. So here we are now, playing for the first time 5 years later. I don't think it's better than the first game. I think that's one of the biggest issues right off the bat. The movement is worse, and overall the game is far more complicated needlessly, with redundant weapons. Do we really need 3 guns of each type? Do we need loadouts, perks, and all the other trappings the first game didn't have? No. The beauty of having a handful of weapons means you can balance them more easily. A simple and straightforward approach that has defined arena shooters for decades. It's not impossible to balance a lot of guns, I know, but I find that most often the more guns there are, the more they tend to have diminishing returns. The armor and weapon designs have no direction. Nothing from this game sticks with me art-wise. And worst of all, for me, the movement is worse, with some interesting additions, but overall worse than the first game. And lastly, that fucking Battle Royale mode. Look, if you like them, that's great, but I don't like them usually. Higher time to kill, long wait times, lots of running, not very fun. And yes, I suck ass at them. More on that Battle Royale later. First, the movement. After all, that's why I'm here. The shooting and the maps are overall fine. The maps could use a few more floating variants, but they need to change the movement first. In the first game, the movement was very floaty. In fact, if I remember right, the jetpack gave you speed and could charge mid-flight, which extended the flight time, which worked great with the floating maps. Now, the jetpack feels slower and heavier, and you lose speed when you use it. The movement, while floaty, felt liquid in the first game. There is one good addition to the movement here, though. The sliding. You gain momentum on downward slopes, and if they mix this with the faster hover speed from the OG Splitgate, boys, we have a hit on our hands. One of the best things that Titanfall 2 did with its movement was, when you actually utilized the 3D movement, i.e. wall running, jetpacking, it could actually add speed. You can gain momentum, which would create some pretty cool plays for the really skilled players. And I feel like a lot of that is missing here. You can gain momentum, but only by sliding down the slope. Here's the thing about the Battle Royale. Despite what I said, it's actually a pretty decent take on Battle Royale because it's original. It's smaller in scale, it's a bit quicker than your average Battle Royale game. And it actually has a couple maps to choose from, with elimination mechanics mixed in from the multiplayer. It's a refreshing approach. But what I keep thinking to myself is, why not make a big team mode? Or even like a squads mode without the Battle Royale constraint? The way you pick maps is cool. In the pregame lobby, you just stand in one of the 4 segments and that's how you pick it. You play in a squad and it's very similar from a mode from the multiplayer, where as long as one member of the squad stays alive, the rest of the team can spawn on them until respawns are disabled near the end of the match. Where it fails for me is time to kill. It's a common feature of these battle royale games, armor plates. It extends that time to kill, and personally, I prefer shorter time to kills of the standard modes. However, it's faster paced than your average battle royale. And it's different. In a market filled with battle royales and copycats, that's a lot to accomplish. However, like the first launch, it's not my thing, and probably won't be. I feel like an arena shooter, a shooter in an enclosed space, which tends to be very fast paced, and a shooter in a wide open space, which is slower, are completely antithetical to each other, in principle and in gameplay, and I think that's kind of showing here, especially with the time to kill and the map size. Personally, I think that's why this game hasn't clicked for me, at least this part of it. That and the movement. However, I can't help but to think I would love a large team mode in a map like this. And hey, if you're listening, I'd come back and try it if you had it. It's been said that when a game adds Battle Royale, it's chasing a trend, being a copycat. And that's the biggest problem with Splitegate in general. It lacks an identity. It's a copycat. The first Splitegate was a hit. It seemingly came out of nowhere. Then as fast as it arrived, it was gone. They wanted to make another game, and it took them about 3 years to do so. They claimed that it would be easier to support it on the back end. However, that means whatever fire they had at the time is gone. And it's hard to rekindle that so-called virality. And the same goes for the relaunch. You had a bit of hype the first time around, and it was wasted. This lack of identity is best shown in the weapons and gear. They add way more guns than the first game, more than necessary. These guns are split into several classes. Assault rifle, pistol, whatever. And these guns are further divided, by the way, into 3 groups, like I mentioned. Purple, orange, and pink, which basically break down into power, charged, and quick weapons. The charged weapons are probably the worst among them. Instead of giving everyone the same starting guns and letting them find them on the arena, now we have these competing metas. Some guns are better than others. The armor is worse. Supposedly it was part of designing factions for the original release, but it was removed. And now the soldiers are visual puke. None of the armor looks particularly good, besides the starter armor, which was in the first game. There were a few good moments, intense matches. However, it's pretty forgettable overall. I think the best chance this game had was at the relaunch. However, if the devs are willing to actually stick with this game for a long term, at least keep the game on market for 2 years, it might have a chance of gaining a player base back. But it's really hard to gain that virality, and it's really just a bet at this point. What makes it all worse is when I went back and looked at the original preview, they pitched this game pretty badly. They pulled the game only to relaunch it. But there are parts in the game that are disconnected or underexplained. Like, who are these Timu Spartans? They're digital gladiators, supposedly, according to a version of the lore. Apparently, Splitgate is a digital blood sport, I guess? So why can't we customize our guy? Only choose an outfit. Terrible ones at that. Gladiators are highly personalized, but instead we get the remnants of this faction system. And let's be real, when it first came out, this kind of exposed the true intent of the sequel. It was easier and better to monetize. They added a lot of really bad deals at the beginning, really gouging people. All while name dropping the best movement shooter of all time, Titanfall 2, my beloved. And not only did they do that, he made an ass of himself by shoving politics down everyone's throat. Regardless of what side you're on, you really shouldn't aggravate your customers with shitty sales pitches and overpriced dog shit. Conclusion. I'm rooting for this game. We need more movement shooters, for sure. But with this in mind, the Battle Royale is completely antithetical to what made the first game great. It's not the only game doing this, too. Every game wants that forbidden Battle Royale fruit. However, I believe most breakout BR games in the future are probably going to come from an established franchise, because that genre is pretty matured. The era of random breakout BR games is largely over. And good arena shooters are still rare, even more so for movement shooters. This game had an identity, but at every turn embraces more generic features. And lastly, this game needs a few years so that it can grow with its community. Games and communities tend to grow together. Something that the first game didn't really get to do. It was only fully released for a year on console, and several years as a beta. I want this game to succeed for many reasons, and perhaps it will. But the game needs time out in the wild. It wants to be a live service, it needs to stay alive. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed my ramblings. Hope to see you again. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Goodbye.